well, not guy, but yes, the baseball is baseball back. You mentioned to me, you were talking about how it looks like baseball's got a little bit, got a little buzz. The ratings are a little tricky. I think the ratings are up, but we keep talking about how they've changed the way ratings are done. And there just aren't a lot of national baseball games that are really heavily promoted. And maybe we'll see more of a measuring stick in the playoffs as far as how much people are into this sort of thing. But I can't deny Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, people seem to be following this because it's amazing. What are your thoughts on whether baseball can recapture the hearts and minds of the public?
Yeah, the reason I mentioned it is because if you just sat down like you're Rob Manfred, a couple of years ago, and you were just mapping out like what is the best case scenario of a season that we can kind of have where particular stars show up for the sake of having these individual names rise up in the sports world, you would have, okay, Ohtani goes to the Dodgers, and then you would have Aaron Judge, have a potential triple crown, be on pace for another record-breaking home run, 60-plus home run season with the Yankees. And, of course, Juan Soto is there, too. That's a good cherry on top. And then you would have Ohtani. Yeah, he's not pitching anymore. That sort of takes a little wind out of the sails. But, hey, as a hitter, he has a 40-40 season.
I don't want to interrupt your point, but does it? I think we're kind of learning that as filthy a pitcher as Ohtani is, it's almost one of these things we like to list as the novelty of, and he's a great pitcher too, but I don't know if we watch pitchers like that. I think we just like the dingers, and we like that he can do it, but we don't necessarily need it, is what we're learning, because there's as much interest in this Ohtani season as there was in any of the great seasons where he was also pitching. But continue.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a good point. And they've often sort of asked the question of like, should Ohtani even pitch when he's able to? Like, he has been throwing off a mound. He is going to do it, obviously. But, would it be better for him to just be a hitter based on the season that he's having now? And I think if you look at things like wins above replacement, he was more valuable if you like add up each component, the pitcher component plus the batter component last year, then he's on pace to be as just a hitter this year. It's tough to have like 12 WAR or whatever it is, 11, 12, as just a hitter. You'd have to be like Babe Ruth, somebody like that. Judge is in that zone, but I mean, he's having 60 home run season that potentially that doesn't come up all the time. So I think it's fair to kind of ask that question. And then for your perspective, just as like, forget about the numbers, forget about the value to the Dodgers, just think about the excitement of having a guy like in the past. I think he was a little bit limited as, all the different things that he could do, because you don't want your starting pitcher to go out there and get injured stealing a base or, a lot of other bad things that can happen to this guy that you're counting on to make a certain number of starts per year, in addition to playing the other days, most of them as a hitter. And so now it's almost like the handcuffs are off. He can kind of do everything except, play in the field, especially because of the arm injury. But other than that, we're sort of seeing the whole package with him. And that's really exciting. And that's what he was billed to be coming out of Japan, in addition to being this two-way player. And maybe there's an element of novelty as well to the two-way. Like at first we saw it. It's the first time that we've seen someone do this in like a century, literally. And now we've seen a couple years of it. And we should, every baseball writer, including me, was saying to ourselves, like almost pinching ourselves and being like, look, continue to talk about how amazing and unprecedented this is that he's doing, because you sort of get that sense that it's easy to take for granted in the middle of it, because, oh yeah, he's a guy that hits really well and pitches really well. And he had the highest, like one of the hardest fastballs, and then also one of the hardest exit velocities. And it's like, yeah, that's crazy that one guy can do all those things. And we constantly had to kind of remind ourselves to not downplay that, but play it up. So now we have like a new shiny way to appreciate him, which is something like the 40-40, and he can, kind of get into even better clubs like we saw Acuna do last season as well. So now there's novelty to that. And I think that if you have him in LA and you have Judge doing his thing in New York, you've got the two biggest markets, arguably the two most popular teams covered in that, this should be a banner occasion for baseball, because baseball has long lamented, especially when like Mike Trout was the most popular player, the most famous, or the best player. I shouldn't even say he was the most popular or the most famous, because he probably wasn't in either of those cases, and that was the problem. You had Derek Jeter still being the most popular player years after he had retired, even compared to somebody like Trout or like a Bryce Harper, had kind of risen up then. And so now you've got this dream situation where you have two very popular players playing in these huge cities doing amazing things. Has that translated? Well, as we saw last year in the World Series, you're still like one Texas Rangers, Arizona Diamondbacks World Series matchup away from having that whole thing implode on itself and
so
nobody
much
watching the World Series. So no time for a victory lap for Rob Manfred right now.
I hate it. I hate randomness in the postseason to that degree. It's really, I still like baseball, but it's a big problem I have with hockey. Both those sports actually share another problem attached to it, a problem that will never be solved. But if I was dictator of America, I would look into these changes, which is just too many players involved, too many players. Baseball's got a problem of too many players, not enough airtime for your big stars people are tuning in for. Hockey, similar, where I don't know how much ice time the Stars have, but it's
I got to say, in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, McDavid and Draisaitl were showing you the limits of how much star players can play, and they were gassed at the end.
I watched that one, and I did notice a lack of impact from McDavid, who they said was tired. But yeah, if I was changing baseball, I might do something really wacky. I might make it a 7-man lineup, and you would respond, well, then there are these massive gaps in the field of play on defense.
You'd have 7 fielders as well.
No. This is part of it. No, we're getting the scoring up. That's what I'm going for. You gotta make choices. You gotta make choices as to where certain guys got to be. And if we're having these pitchers coming on who have this amazing velo, I mean, a lot of bats are getting missed. Maybe you just got to have 7 out there. You have more scoring, and you're just seeing some of these guys come up more often because the baseball lineup just has a lot of guys who are replaceable, not memorable, and this will never happen for a variety of reasons. Tradition is one of them. The other is the players' union. They're not going to accept it getting cut down from 9
conversation.
to 7. Yeah, that's not going to happen. But I think with a lot of sports, if we were reinventing them or inventing them today, we wouldn't have certain things that we're used to. If free throws didn't exist, there's no way you could incorporate that. People will fight against free throws being taken out of the NBA, or even something like one free throw should count for 2 points in those 2-shot foul situations, which I think should be the case. You just it's more efficient, but people will fight against that. It would be just so strange if points were automatically awarded as the penalty, or if it was 1 for 2, if you were to try to bog the game down. Or football, the other example is if forever, whenever you scored a touchdown, it was 7 points, or you had the option to go for 1 and score in the end zone to make it 8 points. Could you imagine somebody saying, hey, I've got an idea. How about instead to get the 7th point, we all line up and we do a little chip shot field goal? It's like, are you insane? Like, why would we do that? That makes no sense. It's like a field goal that's got a 98% chance of converting unless it's the Niners in the Super Bowl. Why would we do such a thing? It doesn't make any sense. But there are certain things that we get used to, and I honor tradition, and I don't think that you should just change things just to change things. And that's my long ramble for my defense of why I totally ruined the game of baseball in the eyes of most of its fans.
Well, I like how all of your proposed rule changes are basically like the hacks that we had to do as kids when there like weren't enough players, or we were in like a weird space. Yeah. So you'd have like, you play like wall ball, and there'd be like ghost runners, or, you'd have certain zones where like if the ball came down, it would be automatically out or something.
Okay. What if baseball needs more football? What about the offensive safety, where the offense gets a guy who will run into the outfield and potentially hit or tackle?
I feel like there was a midway game, like an NFL Blitz style baseball game that let you do that back in the early 2000s, which was the heyday of sports video games. So I endorse bringing that back, even maybe in digital form at first. See how that goes.
Good news, Players Union. We found a way to get more guys on the roster, and it's to hit and lay out the defensive players attempting to catch the fly balls. So hey,
they don't even let you do that in football, Ethan. Like now they've got the defenseless
anymore.
receiver. They've Halo rule, all that.